visions of what he described was a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. Soon after,
Reapers, what is good? It's your boy Laser. You guys know the vibes. We're back with some more scary reaction videos. He's been loving the scary content, so I continue to deliver that for you guys. In this video, we're breaking disturbing interviews with evil people. Guys, there's so many evil people out there, and we're about to dive straight into that. If you guys enjoy the scary content, you guys want more scary videos like this in the future, it's simply just hit that like button, you subscribe, and you turn notifications on. It takes less than a second. Let's dive straight into this video.
people who got possessed.
Oh boy.
Starting us off in our number 10 spot is Son of Sam. While you are probably already familiar with this one, considering he is one of the most infamous killers of all time, the Son of Sam, or legally David Berkowitz, was an evil killer responsible for the death of at least 6 people in New York City during the 1970s, and who famously blamed his evil doings on his possession. Prior to his arrest, Berkowitz liked to taunt the police and would send in mocking letters with the promise of further crimes, which eventually developed into becoming highly publicized by the press. Then, by 1977, he was finally arrested on account of 8 shootings. Now, initially, he confessed to all of the killings, stating he was obeying orders of a demon that manifested in his neighbor's dog, Sam, hence the name, and was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences in state prison. Berkowitz claimed that the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls and that the possessed Labrador issued irresistible commands. Even scarier, in 1977, after his arrest, he was permitted to write a letter to the public in which he stated that there were other sons, seemingly meaning he was not alone in these crimes, but no one else was ever charged. Now, I have to admit, later in the 90s, after becoming an evangelical Christian, he backpedaled, saying that the devil in the dog story was all a hoax and that he was actually a part of a satanic cult that orchestrated the incidents as ritual killings. But I mean, either way, he was a super evil dude, so I'm just glad he looks evil, bruh. Next up at number 9, Tommy Smith. Peter Cherm was a kind and loving father and grandfather who was tragically attacked on February 24th, 2015 when 17-year-old Tommy Smith tried to steal the keys to the old man's Range Rover. At the time of the attack, Cherm attempted to stop who he believed was just some young punk. However, unbeknownst to him, Tommy had already racked up a staggering 57 offenses, and Cherm was going to be his next. In the blink of an eye, Smith stabbed the old man all over his body, allegedly with so much vigor that the blade snapped in 2. However, astonishingly, Peter survived. Fast forward to the following year, and Tommy is on trial for his attack, among his other crimes. But despite the long rap sheet, Smith explained to the jury, or rather insisted, that he was not responsible for his actions, as he had been possessed by a demon on that terrible day. I have demons, bro. Now, it's hard to say if the jury really did take it into account or not. However, it was also known that Smith was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, and so he was cleared of the killing charge and instead sent to a secure hospital indefinitely. Coming in at number 8, a Satanist group. In August of 2008, in a forest outside the city of Yaroslavl, police were horrified when they came across 4 utterly corpses. The bodies had been desecrated beyond belief, but after lots of hard work, investigators were able to determine that all of the victims were boys, and that each had been robbed either before or after their death. However, after taking into consideration the brutality of the crime, they weren't convinced that robbery was the only motive. Eventually, they discovered the atrocity had been carried out by a group of 6 self-proclaimed Satanists who, after a number of animal sacrifices, felt that humans had to be killed in order to please Lucifer. So, under the possession of Satan, the group, dubbed the Yaroslav killers dismembered the 4 teens as a part of an initiation ritual before allegedly ingesting some of the flesh themselves.
Those alien-ass eyes,
Eventually,
bro.
the group faced a trial in 2010, and the leader of the group, Nikolai, was sentenced to 20 years, while the others received varying sentences ranging from 8 to 10 years behind bars. Next up at number 7, Jason Nelson. On the night of May 26, 2015, a man named Jason Nelson visited the home of his dealer, Jordan McGuire. However, instead of their usual exchange, Nelson, out of nowhere, repeatedly stabbed the young man before fleeing off into the night. Thankfully, police were able to track him down not too long after, and it didn't take them long to discover upon interviewing him that he was also responsible for a slew of other crimes that same night, like the essay of a 25-year-old and 60-year-old, both of whom lived near the site where McGuire had been killed. However, what they didn't see coming was his excuse, that a demon had told him to do it. According to Jason, the night of the crimes, he was possessed by an evil entity who forced him to kill McGuire and commit essay on the women. However, this excuse didn't quite hold up all too well, and he still ended up being charged for the crimes, and by October of 2015, he was sentenced to life with a possibility of parole after 27 years.
Did he ever get
Next
out?
up at number 6, Cody Lott. Back in 2016, 2 middle schoolers, Lauren and Michaela, were walking home after school. This wasn't an unusual activity for the girls. However, this time they were approached by 20-year-old Cody Lott in his car.
I thought that was a girl,
After
bro.
making eye contact with Michaela, he pulled out his weapon and began at the girls, sadly taking the life of Lauren that day. According to witnesses, he first shot Lauren, then Michaela, before returning his focus to the already shot and dying Lauren. However, the sickest part of this was what he said in his 2018 trial. Lott initially repeated that it was the devil that had helped him to plan the shooting, and he was therefore not responsible for the girl's death. However, he also mentioned that he believed that Lauren had a boyfriend and that he was jealous of that, which I mean is first of all incredibly gross, as let's just remember that Lauren was in middle school and that the killer was 20. However, secondly, seems a bit contradictory for someone who claimed to be possessed by a demon. Initially, Lott was found mentally unfit to stand trial and was sent to the maximum security unit of Texas Mental Hospital. But later in September of 2018, a jury found him guilty of the killing as well as the aggravated on Michaela, and so Lott, the man who claimed to have talked with the devil, was sentenced to life in prison. Coming in at number 5, Louis Zambrano. On September 18th, 2015, the body of a woman was discovered inside of an abandoned car in Queens, New York. After a bit of investigating, authorities were able to confirm that the body belonged to 28-year-old Angie Escobar, who had tragically died after being stabbed roughly 80 times 4 days prior. This, of course, sent them into an investigation to find the perpetrator.
You guys remember that one girl that was stabbed by those 2 girls in the forest, or that like Slenderman shit? She ended up living too. That was crazy.
And before long, Louis Zambrano was arrested for the brutal crime. Initially, during his interrogation with authorities, Zambrano confessed to police that he had done it. Apparently, Angie was his girlfriend, and she confronted him saying that she no longer wanted to be together, and so he used a pair of scissors to get his revenge. However, it wasn't quite that simple. Next, he explained, while still pleading guilty, that he had been possessed by a demon at the time of the killing. Plus, he apparently also blamed his trust issues for his actions. Now, my question is, if he really was possessed at the time of the killing, why would he also be pleading guilty? I don't know. It's probably best I don't think too hard about it. In the end, this evil man was charged with manslaughter and sentenced to 20 years behind bars for his crimes, but to this day still claims that his possession was the reason behind it all. Coming in at number 4, Jason Dalton. If you have never had uber anxiety before today, This might be the story that gets it started.
Oh,
Back
come on.
in 2016, Jason Dalton appeared to be your
Gray-ass
average Uber driver.
Santa
However,
Claus.
he had a dark secret. He was inexplicably killing a bunch of people.
All right, I'm never taking Uber
was
anymore.
February 20th, 2016, and he shot and killed 62-year-old Mary Louie Nye and her sister-in-law, 60-year-old Joe Nye, 74-year-old Dorothy Brown, 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne, and 53-year-old Richard Smith
So you went after
and
old
his
people.
17-year-old
Shit.
son Tyler. But the most bone-chilling part was that in between these killings, he continued to pick up and drop off passengers at their preferred destinations. Now, out of all of the possessions I've heard about, Dalton's story is easily the wildest, as he told
Weird,
police during his interrogation that it was the actual Uber app that had taken over his mind. Quote,
What?
I know you guys are gonna have a hard time believing this, but it literally took over my mind and body. He
doesn't
then
make-
elaborated, saying that he saw, quote, the symbol of the Eastern Star inside the Uber app, and a horned devil head regularly appeared on his phone screen whenever he logged on for work. After a 3-year-long trial, Dalton was sentenced to life in prison, but even so, he stood firmly by his statement that a demon living in the Uber app possessed him to randomly kill 7 people. Coming in at number 3, 𝐼𝐭'𝐬 Johnson. In the early 1980s, the 𝐍𝐸 family and 𝐼𝐭'𝐬 Johnson made headlines after 𝐼𝐭'𝐬, seemingly out of nowhere, was not only charged for killing his landlord, but was the first man in the US to claim demonic possession as the reason for his innocence against the charges he was facing. However, to explain his 1981 charges, we have to go back a little. Prior to the infamous trial, the youngest member of the 𝐍𝐸 family, David 𝐍𝐸, began seeing visions of what he described was a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. Soon after, David was believed to be possessed by an evil demon living inside their home. Eventually, after things began getting worse, the family enlisted the help of the famed duo Ed and Lorraine Warren, hoping that they could drive the demon out of the boy. Now, 𝐼𝐭'𝐬 Johnson was the fiance of David's older sister Debbie, and allegedly during the final exorcism on David, 𝐼𝐭'𝐬 stormed in and told the demon to leave the boy alone and come into him. And according to 𝐼𝐭'𝐬, that is exactly what happened. A few months later, he got into an argument with his landlord, who he had previously had a good standing relationship with, and stabbed him multiple times. In the end, he was convicted for his crimes, but never wavered that the devil had made him do it.
That's fucking
Coming
weird.
in at number 2, Michael Taylor. Back in 1974, a beloved and cheerful family man without any previous criminal history seemed to suddenly change overnight into a different person. The previously non-religious man joined a local church and quickly became entangled with a 21-year-old preacher, Marie Robinson, who convinced her congregation that the power of God could drive out their demons. However, strangely, the more he became involved with Robinson and the church, the more he changed. The once kind and patient man was turning irritated and foul-mouthed, and it all came to a head when he and the preacher were found naked together. This kind of behavior was so out of character for Michael that the church decided to exorcise him, believing he was possessed.
What the fuck,
They strapped him down and allegedly exorcised a whopping 40 demons from his body, but it would turn out that that wasn't enough, as still 3 demons remained inside him. That night, Michael brutally killed and his wife and dog, and upon being arrested, told police that he was possessed by Satan, who had compelled him to destroy everything living within his house. Deemed unfit for trial, Taylor was ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a psychiatric facility to live out the rest of his life. And last up, in our number 1 spot, Sean Sellers. In his early years, Sean had a very difficult life.
Selling drugs?
His upbringing was a mixture of unreliable and abusive alcoholic parents, mixed with incredibly cruel psychological torture from nearly every adult in his life. And tragically, this pattern of abuse eventually led to a giant explosion that resulted in multiple deaths. On the evening of March 5th, 1986, while wearing nothing but his underwear, Sean crept into his parents' room, caught them in their sleep, and took both their lives.
That's fucked.
However, this wasn't his first offense. It was later discovered that a year prior, he killed a Circle K employee who had refused to sell him beer. Now, the haunting part about this whole case is that Sean claims to have no recollection of the killings. He did, however, make it very clear that prior to killing his parents, he had taken part in an occult ritual and that he was a practicing Satanist, clarifying that at the time of each offense, he was under demonic possession of the demon 𝐬𝐨𝐬𝐿, and that he was not responsible for the crimes committed. Not only that, but similarly to the case of Arn Johnson, his defense attorney used this story and even blamed Dungeons and Dragons, claiming that it had made him unable to connect his actions to real-world consequences. The story, however, did not sway the jury, and Sean became the youngest criminal sentenced to death in America since 1976. Well,
damn, that's crazy. Well guys, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Guys, there was a lot of serial killers in that video that like just terrified me. Which one terrified you guys the most? But if you guys enjoy this scary content and you just want more scary videos like this in the future, you guys know what to do. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace!